got to get it right so everyone can get the information.
There we go.
We've done it, friends.
All right.
Oh, hi, everyone.
Awesome.
So I am Karen. I use she, they pronouns. I'm on the unceded land of the Ho-Chunk, the people of the big voice. I have dark curly short hair. I'm in a black v-neck t-shirt, and I'm in the basement of my studio, which is covered in art. And I will pass it on to Catrice.
Yes, hi. So Catrice Grice. I use she, her pronouns. I am in Colorado right now on the unceded land of the Cheyenne. And I am wearing a purple top and I have long black hair. And excited to be here today. I am an industrial organizational psychologist. So we help organizations to have, better humans at work. And at Mattingly Solutions, where I'm the Chief Consulting Officer, our focus is on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So just wanted to give that quick reminder for those who maybe missed the first two calls we had together this week. And for those of you who have been with us, you probably noticed that Victoria, our CEO, isn't on live with us today. You'll see her in the comments, but we actually wanted to take this time and space to bring in one of our partners who works with us, who has a special focus on trauma healing, which is our topic for the conversation today. And as we mentioned before, we really like to practice what we preach and really lean into allyship and working with people and making sure, there's enough work in this space for everyone, right? And leaning on people who have the expertise to make sure we are doing things right. So that being said, I will let Michael introduce himself even more.
Hey, it is such an honor to be here. My name is Michael. I am wearing a white v-neck with an attempt at a fancy blazer. And I use he, him pronouns, and I'm located in Western Pennsylvania, hoping to one day find my way back home to Florida. And beyond that, I am a diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner, where my whole focus is how do I help us feel seen together, feel felt together, and to delight in one another again. And so it's such an honor to be here as a partner of Mattingly Solutions, as well as meeting Karen.
Hi, thanks for coming, short notice. This is so awesome. And this is like one of those conversations that I feel like is the thing that's sort of overlooked. We really do look at other things first, and the internal and the healing. I think as this world is struggling with how do we heal in these moments. And so when we're talking about specifically a year in which COVID has ravaged our world, the social unrest. 2020 did such a number on everyone. And specifically when we're talking about the theater industry, we are about to open. We are one of the last industries to actually have its grand reopening. And so, when I think about what I do for a living and how much of my emotions and my body is sort of part of what I do, it's not just my mind. There is this idea of well, what will the body and what will the mind allow me to do in this brand new space? And so I wonder if you can talk a little bit. I know that you're IO's psychologists and not, necessarily therapists, but can we talk a little bit about what trauma does collectively to us in spaces?
Yeah, so I want to start by really leaning into what you just said. I want to give this disclaimer and make it very clear that we are not therapists, and we are coming at this from the perspective of how we deal with it in our work. Me as an external DEI consultant and Michael as a DEI practitioner, we have experience helping people in this space in their work life. But please, if you realize that you are experiencing trauma and you need help, seek it. There are people out there who can help you through this. And we may give you some small tips that, we've seen help people, but nothing's as good as the real thing in going and getting that individualized care that you need. And we highly recommend that. So disclaimer aside, yes, this is something that we see and help navigate in the workplace, because as you said, the workplace is full of humans, and every person has an emotion, has experiences that they have to navigate and deal with, and not all of those are positive. And many of them oftentimes without them even knowing, right, lead to some sort of trauma and pain that they then have to work through. And this can look different in a variety of ways. And something that's going to be special and interesting, I hope, about today's conversation in comparison to the other two is we really want to pull in as many scenarios as we can, and talk about personal experiences as well. So I'll lean into one for me. As a Black woman, there have been times in both school and my work life where I have had conversations happen, and it took me time to reflect and realize the impact it had on me. Where I was told, oh, you're speaking too much in class. It's too much for the others. They're intimidated. They can't be their full selves. So you need to shrink back, right? You need to be quiet to give them that space. And similar kinds of conversations of, oh, you how are you talking to your coworkers, and it took time to realize that all of that was trauma for me. It put me in this place where I felt like I couldn't be myself. And I wasn't respected, and what I was bringing to the table wasn't valued. And then it made me second guess even being able to contribute, right? And so that's something that pain set with me, and I didn't feel safe in my environment to contribute. And I had to realize that, and I had to work through it to be comfortable to then do my job, So that's one example of a trauma, and how you, in the moment when you're experiencing it, you may not even realize, right? So that's one personal example, just to show that these things happen every day, and it could be that individual, or to the fact of where Karen was mentioning, 2020 was wild, right? There were so many things happening in society, and hearing that and seeing it on the news, and then looking at social media and everyone else reacting. Or I don't know about you all, but I had a lot of white people in my life come to me and say, oh, I saw this George Floyd thing. How are you doing, right? So having to continually relive these experiences and talk about how it's impacting you and the effect that has on you. So there's a lot of external things that could be going on that leads to trauma in someone, and also, experiences that happen to them individually. And just because you step into the office doesn't mean all of that goes away. You're sitting with that every day, and you have to learn how to work while managing that. And so that's something where, again, we come in and we tell organizations, if you truly, and tying back to our allyship conversation, if you truly want to support your employees, you have to understand that they're dealing with this. And what can you do for them at an organization level, but also what can you do for them if you want to be a one-on-one ally, and what can those conversations look like? So I'm going to do a quick pause. I've been rambling for a while. I'll let Michael chime in too.
No, that's so good, Satrice. I'm just going to pick up where you left off, because Satrice named something so beautiful, that trauma happens every day. But what we have to recognize as people in the workplace is that it's not happening the same to everyone. And what we have to really sit back and recognize that how we approach it changes whether or not you have power in the organization, whether you don't. If you're a manager, there's things that you may not know are happening. And so, and if anything, what kind of culture and environment have you been cultivating before someone has trauma, so that they know that you're a safe place to bring all that comes up in their bodies? And I just want to pick up on what you said, Karen, earlier, even how you framed the question, like, how is your body? And often, let me back up, because for many of us, I work in a lot of diversity and equity stuff, as well as Satrice does. And sometimes my white colleagues can love to live in the abstract and never live in their bodies. And so I want to really break down for a second, what does trauma feel like in the body? Because for many people, there's people traumatized in your cubicle next to your office next to you, and they don't even know it. Yes. And so to give a really simple explanation that I've heard from a really fun therapist of mine, is that trauma is anything that is too much, too fast, or too soon. I'll say that again. Trauma is anything that is too much, too fast, or too soon. And did you notice that even in the story Satrice so generously shared with us, that there was a moment where she named, I felt like I was too much? Did you notice that she was experiencing something that was too much, and in order to navigate it, she internalized and personalized it? And I don't know about you, but doesn't that sound familiar? Does it sound familiar to ask yourself, am I the problem? Am I something wrong? Am I crazy? Well, trauma does this. trauma does something to us where really, and my faith background at the core of it has faith, hope, and love. And trauma at the end of the day is an assault against faith. It's an assault against hope. It's an assault against love. And I'm going to read something I wrote down. I just want to say that, trauma can look like betrayal. Has anyone ever known betrayal? Mm-hmm. What did it make you do in your body? Where did it make you want to leave your body? And what therapists call dissociate. And oftentimes what that looks like is becoming a fragmented version of yourself. And I just want to pause here and breathe with you. I'm going to take a deep breath as a speaker and invite you to do the same, because I know that as a diversity practitioner, I've done this enough to not cater to just the white bodies, but to cater to the bodies that are being triggered. And for some of you, that could be you too if you have a white body. So I'm just going to breathe with you and just say, hey, your body is worth waiting for. As I continue, I want to process that, a man that I've learned a lot from, Dan Allender, was this white man who has done years of sexual trauma work. And it wasn't until 30 years of trauma specialization that he ever even touched race. And when challenged, he said, at the end of the day, I was afraid. Trauma can make us afraid. It can make us afraid to lean in. But if you're going to be an ally, you got to come to the point where you say, your good is tied up with mine. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me just read this one thing. I wanted to say, may I keep going, Satrice?
Yes,
I'm on a roll. Okay. Something that Dan Allender taught me was that betrayal and trauma works to destroy trust. I'm going to talk about trauma's effect on a group right now. So there's specialists that can talk about trauma in the body, and I could spend time talking about the powerlessness and how that leads you to hypervigilance. But one thing I want to name is that is something that, we can process maybe if, Karen wants to circle back to it. But as a group, betrayal only happens between you and someone that you trust. Someone that you don't know can't betray you. Mm-hmm. And so, and betrayal works to deepen that destruction of trust. And anyone who has experienced racial trauma specifically and has had to show up to work the next day like I and Satrice have and Karen have, it's nice when my white colleagues heard about George Floyd, but I remember the silence of Ahmaud Arbery, the silence of Philando Castile, the silence of Sandra Bland, the silence of Alton Sterling, the silence, of Tamir Rice. I remember the silence, and for me, in my body, it felt like betrayal. Mm-hmm. While everyone is business as usual without a care in the world, while my internal world is in turmoil. I'm sure many of you listening know what it means to have your faith in being seen at work and being heard shattered. And it will likely have led you to question your value, your importance, your significance in that space, and it becomes hard to trust. It does not just come between races, that destruction of trust, but it can come between leaders. It can happen between organizations. It can happen between departments. And in my fragmented trust, I start to feel like I have no one to trust. And that inevitably will create a sense in me that I already know that I'm not trustworthy, that I'm not even enough for myself. But I cannot come to anyone else to ask for help. That powerlessness leads to helplessness. So when when faith is being assaulted, our trust between one another is being assaulted, what's actually happening is the bona fide evil, I believe, is our enemy, not our neighbor. Evil is seeking to destroy the fabric of any community to live together with any sense of delight. And this is the cost of unaddressed trauma in the workplace and its impact when ignored. This is what it costs the workplace, because what happens, and I'll come to the body, is that when trauma happens, your brain, there's a prefrontal neocortex, which is up here, which specializes in exploration and creativity, which I imagine if you ever worked on Broadway, wink, wink, Karen, you need that part of your brain to be functioning. But when you're in trauma, so I heard it said that, I wrote it down so I wouldn't mess it up, but I'm going to mess it up. When your body is navigating survival, your brain specializes in survival, which means it goes to the back of the brain, which is where your amygdala lives, which focuses on defense. And that's your quick brain. The creative part of your brain actually shuts down. They've done brain scans where you're in trauma and you're in survival. The front of your brain, I know I'm talking your language, Satrice, shuts down. Right? I'll pass it back to you. I'm just excited to flex my psychology muscles on you. But So what's happening is that when you have a workforce or members of your workforce that are navigating trauma, they're literally, the actual part of their brain that you want to show up to work is not even online for them. And so if you care more about the person than their productivity, why would you not show up for them? I had an executive leader in one company I worked for that, when my colleague and I tried to push the sense of like trauma-informed, workers, they, looked at me and said, Michael, we're here to make coaches, not counselors. And I remember looking at this VP and I said, amen. And the last time you went through pain, wasn't it nice to have someone that listened? And they're like, yeah, what does that have to do with anything? I was like, everything. Everything.
Yeah.
So I'll pause there. Sorry.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
This is,
I went in.
this is
Yeah.
so, I've been choking back tears since you started, because you are speaking about, this is why I wanted to have this conversation. Because it's the unseen terror.
Yeah.
And especially for, our industry, I have to be a shapeshifter. I have to, my emotions have to be reined in, and I have to control. And what you're talking about is something that I have felt multiple times, where my body is saying, please don't make this happen anymore. Stop, get safe. And my job is telling me, these are the benchmarks in which you must meet.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's something that we learn as performers where we start to compartmentalize our pain to get through. Whether if you're a dancer, it's like, that doesn't hurt, I have to keep doing this. You see those photos of ballerinas' feet, their feet, and it is just, they're mangled and tortured and bruised, and yet still these people put those shoes on and they keep working through it. You start to deaden that sense of, you're in peril, you're in pain, let me put this somewhere so that I can actually do the thing. And then we're rewarded for that.
Yeah.
So like for people who are career professionals in our industry, what you're saying right now is like, someone in the comments said, I feel like I've been in survival mode my entire life. Yes. Yeah. For me to do the things that I have to do with my body, I have to just like, and then it's hard for me to identify for people who want to help what the actual issue is. Someone says, how can I help you? And I'm like, I disassociate most of the time. I almost like, I've pulled so far out of it that they're like, what's going on? And I can't verbalize how I need them to assist me or how to help. What would make this better for you, Karen? I don't know. Yeah. So you're saying things right now that really just, I think that it would help so much. And that's why it's so necessary for our industry to start focusing on the trauma portion as we open up, because there are so many people that are flooding our industry specifically because now, representation is something that is going to be looked at, and there's like a level of accountability that will be seen. And so there are so many Black and brown bodies that are going into these spaces that have undergone this year of turmoil, and they will be asked to perform at the very highest level. And what are we doing? What are producers and organizations doing to support these people in space?
Yeah, and I want to pause on that and even go one step further, because it's not. Again, when we talk in this space, it can be so easy to look at one area, and there is a lot that happened to Black folk this past year, but we also have all gone through a pandemic. Every single person. So I don't, like, white people listening, don't think you can shut down and you're not impacted by trauma. And we've all said that today. So you are going through this too. And it's important for people who are running a business, like the theater industry, right? You can't rush. You can't decide, okay, I'm ready to start making money. The CDC said I can open up, so let's go. Business is normal. Everything's fine. No, because these people like we said today, right? Thank you, Michael, for everything you listed out there, all the ways it will not succeed. You are setting yourself up for failure. Notice I didn't say your employees. You are setting yourself up for failure, because they will fail. And if they fail, you fail. So if you want to succeed, you should be setting them up for success. And how do you do that, right? So what are we talking about today? You need to give them time. We need to slow down. We can't go and expect them to work crazy hours or be at 100. We need to start first by saying, okay, let's come in. Are we ready to go? And I know people think, oh, that's fluffy, that's soft. I didn't need that back in the day. You did need it. You just didn't get it, right? That's something that has always gotten me, right? People, no. Just because you didn't know it then doesn't mean it wasn't useful. It's just now we know better. We know the science. I'm here sharing that with you. And I'm telling you, if you slow down, you give them the time to reacclimate to the environment, have safe spaces, brave spaces where you can sit and talk, make sure we're all okay, right? And then you get into your practice and you go on. And something else I want to lean into, because I know we want to tie in theater, but we work in like corporate places as well. And actually this impacts theater as well, is another form of trauma is being overworked, right? I've been having a lot of conversations lately with people who they're in a place where the expected number of hours to work is 60 hours a week. And if you're not doing that, it's not right? And there's some judgment. So now you're feeling like, okay, if I don't work and if I'm not here 10, 12 hours a day, I'm not doing my job. That's not healthy, right? Like that's stress and strain. And trust me, like that's impacting corporate and theater, because I know in that industry you are having some long days. And again, it becomes expected, right? You're expected to accept abuse and to work through it. And we need to change that we need to change our norms. And that's the thing, right? So and by norms in psychology, sociology, we talk about society. We have these normative behaviors, things that in culture we're expected to do. And and that's because it happens in most places. It takes a lot to change a norm once it's been established, but it just has to start somewhere. Someone needs to hear this conversation. Other people need to then have more conversations, and until it's established that, yeah, you're right, this isn't the right way, right? Like we don't need to go in and work and sleep 4 hours a night to be able to get the job done well. And actually, we'll do better if we take the time and work a normal set of hours, have that space to be able to make sure we're in a healthy, safe environment, have some trauma staff available to have conversations. I know somewhere in the comments, someone had also mentioned intimacy coaches. That ties into this as well. You're correct, right? Making sure your employees have the support needed, and one step further, and then I'll pass it, to make sure they know that it's acceptable. Because that's another issue that comes up, is organizations will provide, oh, you can take the time to go see a therapist, or they'll have a therapist on staff or an intimacy coach or whatever. But if the norm is looked at like, oh, if you take that, you're weak. Or, oh, if you take that, you're gonna get less hours. Oh, if you take that, we're gonna judge you. People aren't gonna do it. It's not doing its job. So not only do you need to have the resources available, you need to make it acceptable for people to actually utilize them, to make sure it's happening and having that full impact.
That's good, Satrice. You better talk that talk. Because you're right. And one of the best ways to do that, dear manager or leader, particularly that wants to be an ally, I don't care what color body you have, is you got to embody what you want to cultivate. If you're not going to have boundaries for yourself, like you're not going to judge well those that do. I don't care how wonderful you think you are and how much you follow on Instagram or TikTok, but or how much you post or how much you march or, put on a t-shirt and take a photo with. At the end of the day, I'm so tired of allies who never want to do the work of embodiment. Never want to do the work to change where your body goes. Never want to do the work to change who your people are. Never want to do the work to visit the funerals of those that we've lost in this work. That never want to go to the celebration of those that we're celebrating and honoring, because we know, like, evil won't. We know society won't. We know the norm won't celebrate the small movements that brown bodies make to care for themselves, love themselves, so that when you need our voices and need to know how to help us, like, we have something to share. One of the biggest gifts. So I've had. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself when I say this. I've had 3 white mentors, and out of those 3, I've only had 1 friend. And I say mentors with huge quotation marks because I know what it's like for to have a white man try to essentially, at the end of the day, make me into a version of himself, rather than to a friend and ally who wants to contribute and support me moving into a place where not even they are yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll pause there. I know I can keep going, but my point is that if you're going to be an ally as a leader and a manager, whether in the entertainment industry or whether in the the traditional 9-to-5 workplace, you got to recognize that you cannot lead where you've never been.
Mm-hmm.
You can and will never lead well where you've never been. And I am watching in some of the industries I've been in. I've seen, like, fast forward the tape 5 years from you not embodying what you want to say for others and just kind of check a box. Like, I've seen people get kicked out of their jobs. I've seen people not be able to contain the amount of harm and hurt that people have, so they end up leaving, almost to the point where the actual company is at risk of, like, closure because you didn't care for your people. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, you may not have been a slave driver, but don't think that you have not been influenced by the ancestors that we all come from. And I'm not just talking to white people. Like, I'm talking to the Uncle Toms and the Sambos too, who have internalized what it means to succeed in a white world and sometimes forget how to listen to their bodies. I just want to say, like, as a salsa dancer and instructor,
wait a minute.
Yep. Hey.
He just slipped that in there, didn't he?
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Somebody's trying to get dates.
That's how I met my wife. And so, I got to tell you, as a salsa instructor, as a Afro-Cubano, I found that one thing that my culture has afforded me is the wisdom to know that my body is my brain. Mm-hmm. Now, again, I'm talking to ancestral knowledge here. I'm talking to things that Hawaiian culture knows, things that African culture knows, things that Caribbean cultures know, Jamaican culture, that my body is my brain. Yes. And I don't care what you say, but there are many brown BIPOC cultures that have known things that white academic communities are just discovering. Mm. And shout out to the Native American community because they were the OGs of everything. So shout out. Yes. But my point is that as a salsa instructor, I got connected to the ancestral roots of what it means to communicate with my body. But in order to communicate with my body, that means I have to be able to talk with it. But you know what I'm about to say? That also means I got to be able to listen to it. Mm-hmm. I've literally had to do the work to tell myself in the mirror that Michael, your body is the wisest person in the room, and you can listen to him.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a word.
That you can listen to him, because to survive in these spaces, as Satrice described, it demands a silencing that makes me a collaborator in my own abandonment. Mm. Makes me a perpetrator in my own, in the violence that I protest. And, one thing that I love, I'm sorry, I'm a Marvel nerd. In WandaVision, there's this white man who's like, and at the end of the day, there are problematic people with every kind of face. But there's this white man leader who's like, basically like, if there's a problem, like, let's get Wanda, she's the threat. And this black woman steps up in the meeting and says, no, if Wanda's the problem, that means she's the solution. Mm. And for those of you who have known betrayal, who have known harm, who have known trauma, who have known what it means to survive, for those that think that your body is the problem, your perspective is the problem, guess what? The very place you don't want to go is the place that you got to go through to get out. Yes. To get into delight, to return to delight in your body and to delight in your body with other bodies. And so, but that takes work. That takes work. That takes a lot of work. And I'm telling you right now, people like Satrice and I, we can cultivate a curiosity, but we cannot make you answer the questions. And I know Satrice and I won't answer them for you, because that's actually a disservice. And let me say this, an ally cannot get you there. Sorry, I'm going in, Patrice, because I really do believe that just because you're BIPOC doesn't mean that some ally has to get you somewhere. You have power. And that power first starts with believing your body and believing your own story.
Yes.
And so, and with that said, I know, Patrice,
well, no, that was a good pass the mic of what does an ally do, right? And because that's what we said, right? Allyship through trauma. And I think the key there is a few things. One, we talked about safety a little bit, right? So making sure there's that trust and that they feel like they want to have this conversation with you, right? You don't force yourself on them of like, oh, I think you need help right now, so I'm going to help you.
Yeah, so Patrice, can I add one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
And so trust is not built in the big moments. It's built in the small ones.
Yes.
Amen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. It takes time. Yep. Don't reach out now. You're like, oh, I saw something happening, so I'm going to reach out to this person I never talked to. No, that's not the way. So making sure you have that connection with someone before going in, and then making sure they have a choice. They can decide if they want your help, right? If they're ready to accept it, because that's what we're talking about, right? Is when you're going through trauma, you have to realize it first. So you can't force someone to recognize their trauma. They need to be in that headspace. And then for the person, like the ally and the partner, that's how we talk about it, right? So the partner, you realize, all right, I'm going through this, and you take your steps. Then you go and you can say, if you need something from an ally, right? Like, I don't know how to get this resource, but I know I need it. That's where an ally can help. They can give you something if you're like, all right, I'm ready, but I just need a little something. But most of that work is on the person who's going through the trauma, right? Like, so the ally is just there as a tool, in a sense, like they are something to give you a little assist if you need it. Or just the moral support, to say, hey, I like, you are working through something. I support you, right? Best of luck. So that's one of the examples here. And actually it's more when there's allyship through trauma, it's really more of just knowing, just be available. That's all you do as an ally, is just be available if they decide they need you. Don't push yourself on them. Don't assume you know what they need. Do not give them anything unless they specifically request something of you. That is what an ally does for their partner. You recognize that you need the time and space, and you give them that space to do their own healing. I think that's the big key.
Yeah, because they have the power. Oh, sorry, Karen. Yeah.
No, I just had a question about that, because what I think something that's very like, it started with you, Michael, saying that you need to embody this to actually see these results. And one of the things I want to highlight, I'm also an educator, and we have all of these trainings that are offered to people at these, predominantly white institutions, but they're always, voluntary. And so what we're doing, there are all of these resources and tools out on the table, and there's never this moment of like, oh no, you also experienced this last year, 2 years, you need this tool. Not you can take the tool if you want. You need this tool. I wonder what that looks like in spaces in which you're dealing with leadership that has not processed because they don't see it as a problem for them. And then dealing with the people that you're trying to support. How do you sort of bridge the gap?
Yeah, no, that's a fair point, and in a different conversation. So I was focusing on how to have that connection, but you're right. Let's take that step back. There needs to be conversation, right? We have to move past this assumption of, I'm not Black, so I wasn't impacted. I'm not in the LGBTQIA community, so I'm not impacted. Insert your demographic. This doesn't matter to me. We've got to set that aside. This is the theme we've talked about all week, right? Is these things impact everyone, and you need that support from the top, from your senior leadership, whether that's, corporate, you have your C-suite, or in the theater industry, you got your producers and like your theater management companies. Like, the people who have the most power need to realize that even if they don't feel that pain all the time, their employees are. So they need to be aware, well, what's causing it? What does it mean? How do you define it? And look for solutions. And you can't do that on your own. You need people like us or like in other fields, depending on what you're looking at, Once you determine what your issue is, get external outside help to come in and explain it. And so things you've heard and you will find is that with training, training is very useful to help you define things and to help you figure out what it is you're talking about and how to do it. But that can't be it, right? So if you've probably heard negative things about training, and the negative piece related to training is when you stopped there. So you need to first accept the fact that you are having issues in your organization. Every single organization out there, I'm telling you right now, you have some kind of issue, whether it's related to race, whether it's related to your LGBTQIA+, differently abled people, whatever it is, you have something going on. You need to do an audit internally, figure out where your issues lie. You need to go through some training to learn more. Okay, what does that mean? What are these areas? And then you go and you develop your action plans and you work through. And also, like, yes, we've spent time talking about allyship because that's, a hot topic right now, and there's questions and we want people to know what it is. Allyship isn't all of it. Allyship is only a teeny tiny piece. And it's really just like the extra little bonus, but it's not the hard thing. Think about what I just said about trauma, right? I said, as an ally, all you do is say, I'm here for you. Mm-hmm. That's very reactive, right? And that's okay. That's what it is. That's what it needs to be. That's where it lives. But you need that proactive piece. You need to go out there and you need to, again, you do your training, sure, tip of the iceberg. That's what opens the door. And then you need to do the work. You need to figure it out. You need to now establish your actions, develop the plans that are going to help these people and get out there. So yeah, there's definitely two sides to that. And I'm glad you asked to follow up, Karen.
If I may, I just want to highlight what Satrice said about, you need to be trained, but particularly, I want to highlight what she did not say. She did not say, talk to the brown people around you and make them your trainers. I'll say it again for the people in the back. Satrice did not say, go to the nearest brown body that you like and smiles the most at you. It makes you feel most comfortable and make them your trainers. You have no idea what their smile is hiding and how much that they are dissociated so that they can survive. You don't know. And if you haven't built that relationship already, sorry, good.
I was just gonna quick add, they are also not fully qualified for that work. That's why I said go external. Sure, they have a lived experience and they can speak to their lived experience, but just because someone is in the BIPOC community doesn't mean they know everything about this work we do. I have a degree. I went to school. You study this. There is a science behind it. And don't get me wrong, there is something to be said about those personal experiences. And that's why we say, have those connections and being able to have that brave space where you can talk to someone who you are personally connected to give an extra bonus to the stuff you're getting external. But do not assume this person knows everything or that they are willing and able to have that conversation. So I'm sorry, that's my good. Pet peeve. So I just had to chime it in.
You talk to Trace. Look, the reality is that my trauma is not your teacher.
Mm-mm.
You ever see iRobot with Will Smith and how all the other robots are really strong and formidable, but this one robot has a different durability and resilience? You remember that? Mm-hmm. That's what diversity, equity, inclusion trainers have done. They've done the work to have a deeper resilience so that they can be your trainer, so that you can be the manager that the people that need you and that are vulnerable need you to be. Mm-hmm. And so if you're willing to pay money to get someone to help your bottom line, why wouldn't you invest the dollars that it costs to go ahead, Satrice.
I got one more thing. You brought up that, and this is the one more piece I got for it is, let's say you do have a person who is willing, able, and they understand. Why not pay them? Because that is my other pet peeve in this space is they ask people to do this work. They go to them with questions. They create their, DEI council, task force, whatever it is. But now this person's doing this work on top of their day-to-day job and they're not properly compensated. They don't get a title change. So let's say you want to make them do the work, take something else off their plate and make it formal. Let's respect the time of our BIPOC community and make sure they're getting compensated, right? Like we want them there. If you would pay someone else to do this work, why are you not paying them?
No, not just that, Satrice. Yeah, if you would pay the $2.95 from the ice cream truck man to get an ice cream from them that's been packaged and all these workers have put their time in to make, are you saying that my time is worth less than a good humor bar?
Mm-hmm.
Right? If we could call it, spade a spade, right? And
Yeah.
I want to back up a little bit because there's something that's been catching my attention that came up in the comments. Someone said some of us as Black performers, Sean Dassings 44_soprano dos, some of us are Black performers. Some of us as Black performers are rushing in without the mental strength we will need. Can I just say something to you? If you're someone that, you may be, tapped to be on some diversity council, you may be some person, like, don't bite the power bit. What I want to say to you is this, that if you feel fatigue, no, let me say it like this. If you feel like you're running up against a wall, why not let the wall be an invitation for your body to lean on it and rest? So in essence, if you find yourself hitting the wall and like you don't have the mental strength that you need, then rest. Like I like, to me, that is one of the most profound protests to the world that demands so much of the brown body, the colonized body, the dehumanized body, to be this machine of creativity and art and feel good, right? For you to rest, that is a profound protest. And I got to tell you, that involves boundaries. You got to learn the difference between hearing no and saying no, the difference between saying yes and being able to hear yes. When's the last time you've been able to actually hear yes from your body and have the space to say, actually, I do have space to go take that walk, right? Yes, you can read your script, but you can also let the wall not be an invitation to quit, but be an invitation to lean on it and rest. And I just want to speak to that. Thank you so much for sharing. Many of us have internalized the workhorse mentality that we protest, and we can't even figure out the difference. And so you may want to point the finger at, these quote unquote people in power, but you got to also acknowledge the ways that you have become a collaborator.
Yes.
And in that way, you're actually going to instruct the manager of your boundaries because you're already embodying them instead of expecting a manager to come up with on their own. And I want to say this to those of you that are watching that are leaders in the arts, who are directors to leaders in companies. I just want to say, Therese, Karen, do I have time to just list off a few things?
Yeah.
I just want to say, I wrote it down. I just saw a quote. Okay. Do you want quote or the list?
Whatever
You
you
pick.
think is most
Okay, all right.
useful.
Okay, I'll do the list. So whether you're a manager or an employee, whether you're on the stage or in the seats telling people where to stand on the stage, I want you to know that you have to listen. You got to know the difference between defensiveness and curiosity. You got to know the difference between hurt and harm. Not everything that hurts is meant for your harm. Dear leader in the arts, dear leader in the workplace, if it hurts your ego, that actually may be for your good. Look, I like to work out. It may not look like it, but I lean into the press. I lean into the hurt. And anybody that loves Dwayne Johnson, you know what I'm talking about. You got to lean in to the hurt because it's for your good, because it's focused. Now, it's one thing for someone to come to you and say, I don't like this about you. And as a manager, you know what it's like for someone to just be like dealing with their drama and trauma in front of you. And you're just like the transference object in front of them. I'm not saying that you don't become you're not supposed to become a whipping stick. But I will say that when someone is focused and it hurts, like, it is your job to do the work if you want to be an ally, to learn how to have a self-talk that says, okay, this hurts. I'm going to deal with that later so that I can lean in. Because not everything that hurts is for your harm. And I do want to talk to white people specifically about that. Because brown bodies have often had to learn by de facto the difference between hurt and harm, and regardless still show up. And so I believe in you, because black bodies aren't better than you. We're not stronger than you. We don't feel less pain than you, but we have learned because we've done the work. And so I think you can too. And so I want to say that. But to the manager, you need to listen to that. But if you're not a manager, you need to listen to your body. You need to learn to honor and listen to your fatigue, listen to your exhaustion, listen to where you feel tense, and learn to breathe. And really pause and just, if I dare you in this weekend, next time you feel tension, will you give yourself the kindness to just pause and breathe, because you're worthy of pausing and breathing for. The next thing I want to say is like, know your resources. If you're a manager, don't forget that you have power. For some of you, you can set policies in your own department without any clearance. You can you can make a norm. And now, yes, you can't tell people to go to counseling, but you can say, hey, I'm going to go to counseling, so no meetings at this time. And you just created a policy. You just used your power and did something dope.
And you're role modeling. You're role
Yes.
modeling. They need that.
Yes, because like people that are hurt don't always know what they need. And so that's, you use a manager to know. I'll try to be quicker. I want to say to managers that anything for us without us is against us. Anything for us without us is against us. I'll say it one more time. Anything for us without us is against us. And I'm not talking about one brown body that you're going to tokenize and like that you feel most comfortable with. I'm talking about like a group of thought leaders from the community that you're making decisions that it's going to impact, involving them in the decision making. Because at the end of the day, it's going to pay way more dividends than you thinking that a room full of white men and women are going to come up with the best ideas for everybody that's not like them. And I was going to say something else to employees, but and I want to say another thing to name it to tame it. Everybody repeat after me, not on the call, but if you're listening, repeat after me. Name it.
Name it.
To tame it.
To tame it.
There you go. Because the reality is that if you're a manager, hey, if you're afraid of losing your job, if you're afraid of becoming a whipping stick, if you're afraid of being called racist, if you don't name it, you're going to bring that in your body when you're listening anyway. You're bringing it into the room whether you name it or not.
Yep.
Yes.
And so I dare you to name, even if you've got to write on a piece of paper what you feel in your body. I'm afraid that they're just going to attack me. I'm afraid that this, I'm afraid that that. And then at the end of the meeting, write down what happened. Were my assumptions true? But you got to name it to tame it. And to my dear brother and sister who's, feels like you're in the fight, that doesn't feel like you have any power, you got to name it to tame it too, sis and brother, like, and non-binary, whatever. Like, you got to name it. You got to name what's coming up in your body, and don't expect your managers to read your mind. And don't expect your managers to read your body when you won't even do it. And so another thing I'll say is that when it comes to name it to tame it, and dancers, you should know this, but you don't always know this, that your body is your expertise. Your body is your expertise. Your story is your expertise, and you do not have to prove that to anybody. And anyone that demands that you debate or prove to them something is not a safe place. And you do not owe them your time. People like Satrice and I are the ones that are charging them for our time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I want to add, I'm going to just add one little piece there, because this is something Karen, I know you mentioned you have a similar past. I spent a lot of my time in my life around white people and in predominantly white spaces. Yeah. And it wasn't until more recently that I started to, I like to say, embrace my Blackness, right? And really lean into that and speak to it. And this, something I heard recently and have fully embraced, is I am no longer living to make white people comfortable, right? If something happens to me that is uncomfortable to me, that hurts me, that offends me, I'm not gonna laugh it off. I'm not gonna be silent. I'm gonna speak up in that moment and make it heard. And that leans into this trauma piece, right? Because those are the little things we deal with and we go through every day. Don't write it off. And and I know the fear there, right? It's scary to say. And so that's where we talk about the brave spaces. You got to be courageous enough to say, I'm not going to tolerate that. Yeah. I'm sorry. And it's scary. And what is the absolute worst case scenario? Let's talk about that. You might lose your job, right? Do you want to be in a place that really perpetuates racism so much that you can't say when something makes you uncomfortable because it's racist? And that's when you do that reflection of, you know what, maybe this isn't the place for me. But I'm going to tell you something right now. Most likely, if you, people are putting in this work, they will deal with it. They'll hear you, right? That's the hope. That's the dream. And the more we put it out there and say, this makes me uncomfortable, I won't tolerate it, they can't anymore. They can't brush it off. They can't just fire people, right? Because if we're all doing that, every time it happens, we're like, hey, I'm going to speak to this. And allies, I'm going to speak to you for a minute now too. You have to do it, because that's something that people like to do, is they like to wait, go behind closed doors, and then have their little conversations. No, You need to speak up. If you see someone experiencing a trauma, you as their ally, that's your role. That's another trauma support you can do for your partner. Stop and say, hey, I just heard what you said to them. That's not okay. I don't know if you know that, but that's not what we do here. And don't wait, right? Like don't go try and talk, because that shows, one, to your partner that you are their ally and you're there for them. And it also makes it more clear that it is an organizational standard that you are not going to put up with this stuff. It's not okay, right? If you wait and talk about it later, people can easily write it off and say, oh, it doesn't really matter.
Or misremember what happened.
Yes. Like there's so many reasons why it's more important to just do it then. And again, that's another example where, yes, we're talking about Black and brown folk because that's what we can all speak to well, but this impacts anything, right? If you do something to anyone based on a demographic, it's wrong. Done. Yeah. It doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with your job, so it shouldn't be brought up, right? Yeah. So supporting them when they're going through these traumas. So yeah, name it to tame it. Love that, Michael.
Name it to tame it.
Go ahead, Karen.
Victoria just said something here. Please make me uncomfortable. This is the work. And I think that's, we forget that, that this is part of it. It's not going to feel great. And I just thank you for putting that out there. Please go ahead.
Yeah. And love Victoria because she has embodied, that sense of, I've had, allies who will encourage me and say, Michael, I will lean into what hurts because our friendship is worth it, right? Our allies, me being ally is worth it. But, let me just say this. Allies don't call themselves allies. I'm just going to say that. Like, I'm just going to put that out there. Like, if you call yourself an ally more than people of color call you that, Houston, we have a problem. I'm just going to put that out there. And shout out to Victoria, who leans into what it means to do the work of an ally more than she talks about being one. And so, what was I going to say? So, Teresa, you ended with something so beautiful.
I don't know.
You said so many things.
Oh, go ahead.
While you're thinking about it, I also want to just highlight something in the chat. Someone here said that they had lost a job because they had cried in front of the production team. And I want to just like throw back to what we had discussed, or Satrice just said, like, that's not a space that you want to be in. Yeah. If who you are in space and time is too much, if you were being truthful and honest in yourself, if you are grounded in that, and they're like, that's too much, you're actually doing yourself a huge favor by being removed from that space. That's good. You have to find those places where you're allowed to be your brave self.
That's good. I got to say, like, Karen, what you just named, I just want to say I've lived through that. I lived through a workplace as a diversity professional when I opened up and I said, I'm tired of being there for everyone, but when am I going to be good enough to fight for? It hurts. It hurts. And someone reached out to me and told me that I was manipulative and felt like really overly sensitive. And there were many moments, but it was at that moment that I realized not everything I lose is a loss.
Yes.
That if I have to be how I am now in this space, it will kill me. Yeah. And I want to tell you now, as someone who like went out into the job market, I just found a new job and I am being my whole self. And within the first week, I've heard more things that I longed to hear for the last 6 years that I spent in my last job. Within the first week, hey, within 2 years, we want to get you somewhere. I am in Geronimo mode, and it was scary. But you know what? I love myself for it.
Yes.
And so what Karen is saying is, I want to tell you that there are other theater companies, there are other stages. And trust me, honey, the kind of talent that you bring because you are being your brave self is powerful. And the people that will contribute to you will notice it, and they will hire you quick, fast, and in a hurry. And I just want to say, lastly, this is one of my points I do want to say, is that you are worthy of care, support, and comfort.
Yes.
You are worthy of care and comfort. As someone who stayed too long in a place where I wasn't getting it, I'm telling you, it's not worth the therapist bills. It's not worth the cost on your health, because trauma can be chronic or acute. And long sustained trauma will shorten your life and affect your way of life.
We are going to get cut off here because we are at 1 minute here.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure that we leave with how everyone can find you.
Yes, I'm gonna do the shout out. So you see myself and Michael here. Please feel free to follow us on Instagram. You can DM us. We'd love that. You also see Mattingly Solutions and Dr. V in the comment. You can go to mattingly.solutions.com if you want to send in a contact form. We'd love to work with you. I know a lot of you over the past few days have mentioned your organizations. We'd love to come in and give you any help you need. We have free consultations as well. And I also want to take the time to say thank you, Karen, for being, you're amazing. You do so many wonderful things, right? This is my moment to gush about you. You always gush about us. You're amazing. And you take the time to spend in this social justice space. And we really appreciate you sharing your platform with us so we can get out this important message to not just the organizations, but the employees too, to know that they have power and they deserve all of this to be put in place and to have, to be better humans at work.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jordan, too, for interpreting today and making this accessible to so many. This will be saved on IG Live. We should all come back and do this again. There's so much that we can talk about.
Yes, we'll make it a regular thing.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much who's watching. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And go out and see In the Heights in theaters right now.
Yes.